Welcome back to the Glow Up Girl podcast. I'm Kyra. Thanks everyone for joining. So now I'm so excited to have this conversation with you, Nate. Welcome to the show first.
Well, thank you so much. Hey, listen, so I have become such a fan of this show. I've experienced my own personal glow up. And so to be on the other side of this, actually getting to participate and share my message is a really cool honor so thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I mean, I am so inspired by you and just where you've come from, your journey and where you are today. And I'm really, really, really excited to share. And I feel honored to be able to share it with my audience. So let's dive on in. Why don't you kick us off by telling the audience who you are, what you do, and let's talk about your journey.
Yeah, so my name is Nate Dukes, and I recently wrote a book called You'll Never Change. The book was designed for people who feel like their life is too messy, like it's too messy to change, like they feel stuck, like they feel like there's something more inside of them, but they don't necessarily know how to go to that next level. They say that a good book is the conversation that you have over and over and over again. And the big question that I get from time to time is, Nate, how did you create your comeback? And so I took my story, but also the principles that I used, because the reality is that like, it's not just the information that will change us, because if it does, we'd all be rich and skinny. Okay. So it's not the information, but it's the action that we put behind that information. And so I put practical application inside of this book so that anybody who's reading it can start to apply these principles to their life and really start to see things shift and change. And maybe it takes off a little bit slow at first, but as momentum begins to pick up and their life starts to change, all of a sudden they look back a few months or years later and they say, I have a completely different life than the one that I used to live. And so I wrote this book. It came out in June. It went to #1 on Amazon, which was a really, really cool experience for me. And so now I get to travel and share my story. I've done a lot of in-person speaking, but also I've done a lot of virtual speaking and podcasts too. And so I really just feel compelled to inspire people, but also teach people like who you were is not who you are. Mm-hmm. And just because you've made some mistakes, it doesn't mean that you are one. And so we're not going to give up this time. And so we're going to start right away. And the cool thing about making change is that you can just start. You can just do it now. Like there's no prerequisite to it. There's not like, okay, well, I've got to get my life right first before I said, no, it's like, you can just start doing it now. And I know that almost oversimplifies it, but I think that the conversation that we have today is really going to start to shed some light in some areas for some people who might feel stuck right now, who might like, if you've ever said, that's just who I am, or that's just me, or I'm never going to change that area of my life. I would just like to propose to you that maybe today, based on the conversation we have, you might be able to look at things a little bit differently.
Yes, I love that. And you said so many things that just like struck out to me. First of all, yes, you can always start today. Like I always tell people that, like, oh, well, I gotta plan for it. I gotta get everything in line. Like all the stars will never line up. You just have to do it. Like people starting businesses, people changing, like starting workout plans, like you just have to do it. So that's definitely one thing. And second, you said something that I really love. I love practical application. So you have come to the right place, because we at Glow Up Girl, we love people who share like actual practical tips that people can use. So yes.
Well, yeah. So, and so absolutely. And so here's what we're going to talk about today. A few things that we're going to dive into is my story, but also too, like, I believe that when we start getting comfortable enough to share our story with other people, that our stories have the ability to change other people's stories. So maybe you've experienced something right now and you're listening to this and you're like, well, that sounds good for you, Nate, but I don't know if I could ever do that. I just want to maybe pull out some of those dreams that have been dormant for a while, or maybe it's been a long time since you've thought about sharing your message. I really want to encourage you. There's some freedom in letting go of the things that have been holding us back in the past. There's freedom to be found when we choose to use our voice and not let shame or guilt hold us back from actually stepping into the future that we've been designed for, that we've been created for, that has been placed on the inside of us.
Exactly. Exactly. So why don't we get started? Let's talk about Nate pre-comeback.
Yeah, for sure. So to understand where I'm at now, you really have to understand where I came from. And so growing up, we didn't have a whole lot. We would probably be considered probably the poor family. We were used to hand-me-downs and handouts. My parents, they had some broken mindsets that were passed down to us. And I just want to be very clear. I don't blame them for anything. They were really kids trying to raise kids. And they did the best they could with what they have. And I remember one Christmas, my mom coming up to me and she said, "Hey, listen, don't plan on having a whole lot of presents underneath the tree this year." And, as a kid, that's really never anything that you want to hear. But there was this really great church that came along and they bought my mom presents for all of us. And we had this amazing experience. But we also understood that this didn't come from my mom. This didn't come from my dad. And so when I turned 18, I really wanted to escape the chaos of my childhood. So I did what any 18-year-old does that has no direction or plan. I decided to apply to a public university and I took out a massive amount of student loans. By the way, I don't suggest that if you don't have a clear direction or vision for your life. I'm still paying the penalty and the cost for that, but that's a different story for a different time. So I applied to the University of Akron and I went there and I'll tell you, I had a really, really good time because I wanted to create, I wanted to build, I wanted to have a different life than the one that I had now. But as much as my studies were something that were important to me, I was also introduced to the party scene. And so now I'm experimenting with alcohol and I'm taking drugs for the very first time. And this party lifestyle is actually starting to compete with my studying. And so now I'm taking prescription ADD medication just to try and keep up. And now I feel hyper focused and I'm locked in and I feel like Superman. And what started out as a weekend fun experience turned into a full-blown drug addiction at age 19, 20, and 21. And I tell people at that time, I had a really good time, but what feels good in the moment isn't always good for your future. Mm-hmm. And so after 4 years of coming nowhere close to getting any kind of a degree, I had to drop out of college and move back in with my parents. That was for me, that was the real walk of shame for me, moving back in with mom and dad. And so, but there was still this like entrepreneurial builder spirit that lived on the inside of me that wanted to create and build. And through a series of events, I actually got the opportunity to partner with a friend of mine to open up a bar and restaurant in downtown Youngstown, Ohio. And we took what was in the beginning a failing business and we turned it into something that was actually pretty successful over the course of about 2 years. And so now I have access to more money than I'd ever seen in my entire life. Now, this wasn't like a life-changing amount of money, but you just got to understand, for me, it felt like being the poor kid. It felt like the world. And so I have a car that's nice and new. I have an apartment with the high-rise ceilings in downtown. I'm in social settings that I would have probably never had access to before. And I thought that once I had all of this stuff, that maybe I would finally be happy. That once I got all of these things, that little broken kid in the side of me would finally feel significant. And the truth is that it never fulfilled me. I never found my happiness. I never felt the way that I thought it was going to. And so the drug addiction really started to ramp up. And I'm taking 4 or 5 times the amount prescribed to any human being. And now all of a sudden, I'm not just taking drugs, but I'm finding myself going to the casino late at night and I'm gambling all of the time. And it's not even the money anymore that I'm addicted to, but it's almost the high of winning and losing. And I start to develop this gambling addiction on top of a drug addiction. And over the course of a year, I actually ended up gambling and losing pretty much everything that I personally owned away. So my business bank or my personal bank accounts, they had gone to pretty much zero. I had to sell my car, and even though my accounts were empty, my business bank accounts, they were still full. And so I started to move money around. I started
Mhm.
to just try and make it work and figure it out. And I guess at the
Yeah.
time I thought to myself, well, geez, aren't I the business owner? Isn't this my money anyways?
Mhm.
Well, here's the deal. You can't take business money and use it for personal investments, especially when you have partners, because that's
Yeah.
called embezzlement. And so now here I am embezzling money out of my own business to feed this monster that's living on the inside of me. And it really all came to a crash when we had 15 employees who worked for us. It was payday. And my partner came up to me and he said, Nate, it's time to cut the checks for everybody. And I just remember coming clean to him in that moment and just
Mhm.
saying, listen, if we write these checks, there's not going to be enough money in the accounts to cover them. And you could see the look on his face. He was frustrated. He was confused. He was upset. And then finally, it all started to catch up. He realized that I had taken the payroll money the night before and I had gambled it all away.
Mhm.
And so he gave me an ultimatum at this point. He looked at me and he said, Nate, you can either sign this business over to me and walk away from it free and clear, or I'm going to get lawyers involved and I'm going to press charges. So at 26 years old, I signed over what was essentially my life's work at that point. And
Mhm.
I didn't know who I was because my identity was being wrapped up as a business
Mhm.
owner. And you take that away, and
Right.
I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And so I had to move back in with my parents again. I could hardly hold down a job. Man, I would get a job as at a local restaurant as a server somewhere. And but I would resort back to what I knew, which was taking from the cash register. So I'd get a job,
Mhm.
I'd steal, I'd get caught, then I'd get fired. And this happened 3 different times, actually. The
Mhm.
last time that I got let go, I was walking around my parents' apartment complex where they were staying. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd just taken a handful of pills and I was going up to different vehicles to see if any of them were unlocked. I just wanted to find anything that I could take, that I could sell, anything I could really get my hands on to feed the addiction. And I ended up opening up the car door to a 1999 Buick LeSabre. And I lifted up the center console. And as I stuck my hand in, I pulled out the spare keys to that car. Apparently, that's where you keep the spare keys to a 99 Buick LeSabre.
Wow.
Who knew? But I thought to myself in that moment, maybe this is a chance to escape. Maybe this is a
Mhm.
chance to get away, because the life that I have now
Mhm.
is not the life that I want to live. And I didn't wake up that morning thinking today's the day that I'm going to steal a car.
Right. Yeah.
But when you find yourself in the wrong place with the wrong headspace, you
Mhm.
never know what is possible. And so I loaded up a few garbage bags full of clothes. I put them in the back seat of the car and I took off for Houston, Texas. I had a friend who lived down there that said, Nate, if you ever find a way to get here, I'll help you to get back on your feet.
Mhm.
And so I made this journey. I made it about halfway, right outside of Nashville, Tennessee.
Mhm.
I pulled into a gas station because I'd been up for about 3 days at this point, and I just wanted to get some sleep. And so I
Yeah.
pulled in and I turned the car off. I closed my eyes. And then I remember being woken up at 9 a.m. to three really loud bangs on the driver's side door. And a stranger's hand reached into the car, pulled me out, put me in handcuffs, and sat me
Wow.
in the back of a cop car. And it was in that moment that the weight of every decision that I had ever made sat on my chest like a ton of bricks. And this thought kept running through my mind. It was the same thing that my business partner told me. It was the same thing that people who I had taken advantage of had told me.
Mhm.
But I found that the loudest voices are oftentimes the ones that are in our own head. And
Mhm.
it kept saying, you'll never change. This is who you are now. You're never going to change your life. And so they took me to Cheatham County Jail, where I spent 6 months of my life. So
Mhm.
this was a pod style facility. So I shared it
Mhm.
with 16 other guys. So there was 8 bunk beds in the pod. There were 3 tables. There was 2 restrooms, but there were 0 windows. The only
Mhm.
opportunity that we got to get out was once a month. They offered something called church service. Now, I was not really interested in going to church at this point, but I did want to get out of that pod so bad. And so I walked down this long cinder block hallway. Off to the left-hand side, there was 16 folding chairs set up. And we walk in, and we're some ugly looking dudes at this point. So our hair is grown out. Our beards are a mess. Orange is not a great color on any man. And so we walk in and we sit down, and this really, really old guy walks in, and he pulls out this really, really old guitar. He starts to tune it up, and he looks at us and he says, fellas, the only difference between me and you is that I never got caught for the things that I have done. And he starts to play the song Amazing Grace. And he goes, amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. I was blind, but now I see. And I look around the room, and I see guys who had hurt people, who had taken advantage of others, with tears streaming down their face. And it's actually really hard to describe this moment, because I wasn't worried about my past, the things that I had done wrong. I wasn't worried about my future. When am I going to get out of here? This overwhelming sense of peace just fell on me. And then that weight that was on my chest started to actually lift off of me. And I just remember in that moment crying out, saying, if it is possible to change, I want to, because this is not the life that I want to live anymore. I don't want to continue to do this. And so when I got out of jail, they gave me 2 years of felony probation, because you're not allowed to steal cars and drive them across the country.
You're not?
Just in case anybody was wondering, I had to learn the hard way. But I got really obsessed with, how do you create sustainable change? Because I don't know if you've ever tried to change something in your life before, but man, it's not easy. Yeah. And I started to get really obsessed with personal development, with spiritual development. And I found this John Maxwell book that said, if you want your life to change, you've got to be the one that changes first. And this really inspired me, because now all of a sudden I started to look inwards for the outward problem of my life. And so I made this commitment to myself. I said, what could 1 year of my life look like if I just tried to become the best version of me in all areas? I could heal from my emotional wounds. I could try and become the best son or brother that I possibly could. I wanted to try and figure out my financial situation, because it was a mess. It was completely destroyed. Now, what could it look like to tap into the spiritual side of me that I felt like died away a long time ago? And here's the truth. If I wanted to, I could always go back to the life that I was living. So I just decided, what could 1 year look like if I committed to this? And I'm here to tell you, several years removed from that, transformation is continuous. It's ongoing. It never stops. So it didn't just stop with that 1 year. And so now my life looks nothing like what it used to. So I got married to the love of my life last year. Her name's Jenna. She's absolutely amazing. We bought our first investment property together, and we're actually looking at what could it look like to acquire a second one. I sat on a board of a nonprofit before for underprivileged youth. I lead hundreds of volunteers at my local church every single week. Shout out to Russ City. And the thing that I'm really, really proud of is that I wrote this book, not because I'm chasing any kind of success. I hope that it does well, but really I'm looking to, how do I create an impact in this life now? How do I help as many people as possible? Because I've experienced my fair share of success, and I'm telling you, it feels good, but briefly, momentarily. It's not sustainable. So how can I help people? How can I help people to experience fulfillment, but then also, how do I experience success along with that? And so that's where my life is at now. And I'm super thankful to say that this has been something that I'm proud of. I'm excited for, but it's not just for me. It's for other people as well.
Yeah. Well, that is an amazing journey. And I thank you so much for your transparency, because that's what matters. In order to have impact on others, they have to believe that you are being honest about your story. And I know that couldn't have been easy, to tell your story, to write about that in the beginning, but it just shows the growth, right? It just shows your growth. Let me ask you a question. So, when you finished your jail sentence, and you started this, development journey, this personal journey, what changes I mean, obviously you came back out and you were back in the world. So
Yeah.
you probably have people in your life that maybe weren't the best, for you in that moment. So how did you go about making some of those types of changes as far as people in your life?
Yeah. So first of all, psychology will tell us that we are the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. Science will even tell us that we'll make the average amount of money of the 5 people who are closest to us. And so if we understand that principle to be true, we've got to really start to take some personal responsibility and look at who do we do life with. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what I did. And I didn't fully understand it in the moment,
Mhm.
but I was going on a journey of really trying to let go of the people that shouldn't be in my life so that
Mhm.
my hands could be open to the new people that needed to be in my life.
Yes.
And when I talk to people about this, it can start to get a little uncomfortable because
Mhm.
there's comfort in our social circles. There's comfort in the people that we spend time with. But when we bring this up, people say, Nate, are you telling me I'm supposed to give up on people? Are you telling me I'm supposed to walk away from some people? And if you are in a toxic relationship or a toxic friendship right now, this actually may be the permission that you need to step away from it. This might be
Mhm.
the permission that you need to say, no, 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 no. And you know the people I'm talking about. These are the people that when you get
Yeah.
around them, you become a different person. You
Mhm.
start saying things that you would have never said before. You start doing things that it's like, that's not me. That's not who I am. And so we want
Exactly.
to we want to walk away. We want to close the door to those people because they're pulling you away from the plan and the purpose and the destiny that has been placed on the inside of you. And so
Mhm.
once we start to build some momentum with that, really, I'm not saying give up on people. I'm not saying cut people out. There's plenty of people from my past that when I see them, it's like, hey man, how you doing? How can I pray for you? It's not necessarily like, hey, I'm going to invest all of my time into you. And
Right.
that's the key part. It's an investment of time. So I'm just going to start to limit how much time I give to these people. And you watch when your hands are full, it's hard to carry anything else.
Mhm.
But once I start to let go, and now my hands are open, I'm actually open to receiving new people with new visions, with new
Mhm.
potential, with new direction, with new dreams. And all of a sudden, my life looks completely different because who you surround yourself with is who you become. And that wasn't easy for me. Part of it, there was nobody in my life that wanted to be around me. And the
Mhm.
people that weren't any good for me. And so
Yeah.
I really had to go into a loneliness season. There was a
Mhm.
time in my life where I just wasn't spending time with anybody. And then you find one person who you're like, you get it. You are going in the direction that I want to go
Mhm.
in. And they
Yeah.
introduce you to somebody else and then
Yep.
somebody else. But it really starts with me saying, I'm just going to be okay with limiting my time with the people that I know aren't going in the direction that I
Yeah.
want to go in.
Exactly. Now, what role has mentoring played in your journey?
So this was huge for me. So when I wanted to really make significant changes in my life, that's what you hear all the time. People say, get a mentor, find somebody that's
Mhm.
gonna guide you, gonna lead you.
Yeah.
And that can be so intimidating, especially when you feel like you have nothing to offer a mentor. And I just want to break some of the stereotypes of the myths away from that. If you're looking for someone to mentor you, trust me, the mentor gets so much out of that relationship as well. It feels good to help people. So don't rob somebody of the blessing of helping you achieve your dream. So we're gonna allow people, we're not gonna be blessing blockers. We're going to allow people to speak into our lives. And so I wanted to find a mentor in a couple of different areas. I wanted to find somebody who could teach me about finances, somebody to teach me about emotional trauma, somebody to teach me spiritually. How do I like walk this life out with God? And I'll tell you, one of the mentors in my life, his name was Brad. He was absolutely amazing. A good mentor will take you places that you have no desire to go, but you desperately need to. And so when we find somebody that we when I say this, we need to be willing to trade places with the people that we take advice from. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I see that you're doing something that I want to do, or I see the track record that you have, or I see the pattern of success that you've created,
Mhm.
now I'm open to receiving from you. But
Right.
I'm sorry, I'm not going to take crypto advice from my broke uncle at the barbecue. Okay. Like, I'm sure there is a way to do it and be successful at it. I just
Right.
can't take that
It's
advice from you.
not
I
from
just
you.
can't get it from you.
Yeah.
And so we want to be willing to trade places with the people that we're allowing to mentor us.
Mhm.
And so I just want to really encourage you. If you haven't found someone yet to speak into your life, definitely consider it. But here's the caveat. Here's the kicker. Here's the thing that you have to remember. If you're going to let someone give you advice, you have to actually take it.
Yeah.
There's no point in letting someone just pour into you and then it pour out of you. You need to take their advice. Otherwise, you're wasting your time, but you're also wasting theirs.
Exactly. Yeah. That's so true. I mean, I talk a lot about that, like just having mentors, having coaches and people, I'm like, you have to, in order for you to evolve, you have to invest in yourself. You got to invest in you, and you have to be willing, like you said, to take the advice.
Yes.
Like it's oftentimes the things that like my coach may challenge me to do. Yeah, it doesn't feel comfortable. But guess what? You're like 100 times better for it because it elevates you to that next level.
That's
if
right.
you want to keep playing small, you're going to continue to play in small circles.
That's
and
right.
You're going to continue to be around people. Everything you said about that, about the circles that you keep, I mean, that is so true, because it is only when our mindsets elevate up, sometimes you leave people behind. It
Yes.
doesn't mean you don't care about them. It doesn't mean you're not like still cool with them. But sometimes to get to that next level, you have to elevate, and your mind is thinking that your mindset is different. And you gotta have that growth mindset. You gotta want more, and you gotta believe that you deserve more.
That's right. And let me give a little bit of a sneak peek into some of the relationships that I share now, and really what people have to look forward to when they start to upgrade their social circles. So I need two types of people in my life. I need people that are going to know me, KNOW, know what I've been through, know what I struggle with, know what I heard about. And then I need people that are going to know me, NO. No, Nate, that resentment doesn't look good on you. No, Nate, you shouldn't send that text to your wife. No, Nate, you shouldn't be running around this late. Like, I need people who are going to understand what I've been through, but also who are willing to call me out and show me the blind spots and the blind areas of my life. Because when we are willing to accept and look at our blind spots, that's when we become willing to grow as human beings. Yeah. And a good social circle is going to do that for you, not in a mean way, not in an aggressive way, but just in a way that's saying, hey, you're actually better than that. I see more inside of you. You don't need to be playing small. You don't need to be running around thinking that you're not worth it, because you are.
Sure. Let me ask you this. Are you still triggered by emotions or issues from the past? And how do you deal with those things today?
Well, so a ton of therapy and a whole lot of prayer. Yeah, absolutely. So as human beings, we're oftentimes affected by the traumas and the emotional hardships that we experience in our past. And it's a process to work through some of that. And sometimes that process can be painful and it can hurt, and it doesn't always go as fast as we think that it's going to. And sometimes when you start to dig stuff up, all of a sudden you find yourself being more emotional than you thought you were ever in your entire life. You're like, why am I crying in my car on a Tuesday? I don't understand this right now. But yeah, there's still things that trigger me. And there's deep down inside, there's still this insecure, chubby little kid who just feels like he's not special. And the only time that he is special is when he does special things. And so when I have people who don't agree with me or call me out, or give me resistance in my path, I start to look inward and say, well, what's wrong with me? What did I do wrong? Why am I not good enough? And I'm just here to tell you, anytime you do something of significance, anytime you try to build or create or go for another level, there's always going to be people who come against you. We lovingly refer to these people as haters. Okay. They are haters. And haters love to hate. And as T Swift says, haters are going to hate. Okay. That's what they do. You can reference any YouTube video that has more than 1 million views. just go to the comment section and you will see that it is just filled with people that really have nothing but nasty, terrible things to say. But here's the deal. Haters are actually a sign of significance. Haters are a sign of significance. When you start to build, you're going to have people that come against you. So right now, if you're a hater listening to Glow Up Girl and you have nobody to hate on right now, as Cat Williams says, feel free to hate on me. I need some more in 2022 to level up. I need more haters because they're a sign of significance. And if you don't have anybody who's causing resistance in your life, you just really have to ask yourself a question. What am I doing with my life? Am I doing anything of significance? Because I'm going to always attract resistance. And so, yeah, there are people who come up and say nasty things and say terrible things. And really part of it is they know a version of me that doesn't exist anymore. They know a version of Nate Dukes who wasn't always this kind, loving, caring, passionate human being. They know a self-centered, selfish, broken human being that was only looking out for him. And so I don't know that I always blame these people for coming up against me. And my prayer is that one day they will get to be reintroduced to this new version of me, and through some time and being consistent and really trying to repair the bridge of trust with that human being, they'll actually see that who I was is not who I am.
Right. I like that. Well said. Well said. Haters. All right. So let's talk about your book. Tell us about the book. I see it behind you there. So everyone who's watching, see, there's the cover, so you can go out and find it, purchase it. But tell us about it. Tell us about the key themes in your book.
Yeah. So it's called You'll Never Change, Create Your Comeback and Prove Them Wrong. And so it's really, it's 13 chapters long, and each chapter has a comeback challenge attached to it. So there's a portion of my story, a principle that I use to change my life, and then also a challenge that's attached to it. So like literally right away, you can start to apply those principles to your life as well. And so this is a very easy read. I designed that very specifically because I wanted it to be something not that I was getting caught up with in trying to keep up. And I didn't want it to be a display of how elegant I can put words together. That wasn't my goal. This was more of me trying to get as much inspiration and action into a book as possible that people could actually get through it. And so each chapter has a different theme, a different part of my story. I cover gratitude. I cover creating a vision for your life, which is so vitally important. I would say that's one of the first steps that you really need to start to master is how do I create a vision? I cover things like, how do I start to forgive myself? How do I actually look myself in the mirror and become proud of me again? I talk about the social circles, the haters. I talk about several different principles, and all of these are independently different because we're not just, I don't think that there's just one thing that we need to solve that will change our life. Right. If you get caught up into these late night infomercials or some of these like YouTube videos that say, I've got the one secret or the two secrets that you need to change your life right now, run in the opposite direction. Because they're coming after your money, and they're going to take you for $599 and sell you a back-end master class course that's attached to it. But I am here to tell you that there are many principles, there are many areas of our lives, but that's why we need different mentors. That's why we need to get wisdom from, Bible talks about getting wisdom in a multitude of counsel, different areas, different podcasts, people who have experienced life and figured out how to overcome it on the other side. And so I tried to compact as much of that into this book as possible, and it's done really well. So right now it's being taught as curriculum in different recovery and rehab facilities right now for people who are trying to make those kinds of changes in their life. But it's also been like a personal development guidebook too for people who like, they say, well, I never experienced the drug addiction stuff, but I can't wake up when my alarm goes off. Like I hit the snooze 17 times. So there's practical application for anybody who wants to start to create real sustainable change.
Yes, I love that because it is all about it being sustainable. I mean, you don't want to just have like a one-hit wonder. Oh, I did this. I did it for like 5 days and then I stopped. right?
Right.
So that's super important. Okay, so let me ask you this question. Um, what's your relationship like with yourself today?
Huh. So I would tell you, it was not always as good as it is right now.
Mhm,
I hated who I was. I did not
mhm.
like the person, because when you make mistakes in your life, there's a part of you that doesn't actually want to do it. But there's a
Yeah.
desperate part of you feels like this is the only option that I have, or maybe it's not worth it to make the right choice. And so
Mhm,
when you compound enough negative decisions in your life, you really start to look at yourself and go, this is not who I want to be. And so I hated myself for a really long time. And so I had to go on this journey of what does it look like to actually start to forgive myself and love myself again. And so I had to, this is a little woo woo. So just bear with me for just a second. I had to sit down with three different versions of myself.
mhm,
And I had to look past Nate in the face, and I had to look at him, and I just said, you have done so much to destroy the life that we could have had. Um, I don't like what you did. I don't like who you were. But even through all of that, I am going to try to find a way to forgive you. And I'm going to try to find a way to love you again. And
mhm,
you'd be so surprised what can happen if some of us actually start to forgive ourselves for the things that we've
mhm,
been holding on to. Unforgiveness is a prison that we will keep ourselves locked in. And it's only when we start to actually forgive ourselves that we actually set ourselves free from that moment. And it's like, I
mhm,
don't know if you've ever had a friend who's more like a frenemy who always is talking about you behind your back, and you don't want to spend time with them, but somehow you find yourself always around this person.
mhm,
When you don't love you, it's like
mhm,
spending all day with a frenemy. So
mhm,
we want to find a way to fall in love with ourselves again. And it starts with forgiveness. And then the second version of was right now, Nate in the mirror right now. And I looked at
mhm,
him and I said, there are some people who don't believe in you yet. You've made some changes on the inside that nobody
mhm,
can yet see on the outside, but I believe in you and you can do this, and don't stop and keep going. And we're not going to give up this time, because giving up never got us anywhere that we wanted to go. We're
mhm,
going to build our life back brick by brick. And I really became a coach and an inspiration. I started to build myself up, because sometimes
mhm,
that's the only voice that we have. And so if our voice in our head is, you're not going to do it, you're not worth it, you're not going to make it, don't be surprised when you don't do it. You can't make it and you fall
mhm,
short. So we want to start to change that narrative of that voice inside of our own head. And then future Nate, I had to sit
mhm,
down with him, and I looked
mhm,
at him and I said, whatever it takes to give you the life that you deserve,
mhm,
I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to get uncomfortable. I'm willing to start over. I'm willing to be at the bottom again, be a novice. Like, oh
mhm,
God, that sounds terrible, but I'm willing to do it. And Tim Ferriss says that everything that we want in life is on the other side of an uncomfortable conversation. And these
mhm,
were some uncomfortable conversations that I had with myself. But I'm just here to tell you that if you are avoiding the communication with you, you're missing out on repairing the relationship
mhm,
with you. So we got to be willing to have some brave communication with other
mhm.
people, but also with ourselves too. And so that was the beginning of me starting to build some self-confidence, because
Yeah.
I really think that's the key. Self-confidence is the
Mhm.
key to having a good relationship with
Yeah.
yourself. And that's built through consistency. So
Mhm.
consistency creates credibility, and it also leads to self-confidence. I don't know if you've ever had a friend who comes up to you and like shares all their big dreams and their goals, and they're going to change the world.
Mhm.
But in the back of your head, you're thinking, I don't know if this is ever going to happen. I just don't see it on the, I don't know, man. I don't want to say it to their face, but I just can't see it.
Yeah, you're like,
Um,
"No."
it's because that person hasn't built up enough credibility with you yet. And
Yeah.
so we need to, if in order to build credibility, we have to be consistent. So I want to
Mhm.
start to show up for myself on a daily basis to be
Mhm.
consistent. And this isn't like when I talk about self-care, this isn't just like I'm calling off at 3 p.m. because I need a spa day right now. I'm talking like, how do I really look at myself, love me, take care of me, set proper boundaries for me? How do I do the things that are hard the stuff that I don't want to do, but I know that I need to do that hard stuff. That, my friends, is what will start to create the credibility in your life that will lead to the self-confidence that will ultimately give you the relationship that you want with you.
Yes. Y'all better grab hold to that. Grab hold of that out there, listening and watching. Now that was great. This has been an amazing conversation. I feel like I could keep talking to you forever.
Yeah.
But I'm just giving you people out there watching and listening a little taste of Nate so that you can go and you can pick up this book. Where can I get your book?
Yeah, so it's available on Amazon right now. You can type in You'll Never Change. Or you can go to you'llneverchange.com and you can get it from there.
Yes, please go out there and support Nate. I mean, I feel like we're going to have this around too, because
I would love that.
Yes, this was awesome. Awesome. Okay, now before I let you go, I have to got to give you 5 random questions, right?
Okay.
Got to get more on you, Nate.
Yeah. Let's do this.
All right. So first question is, how do you start the day?
Start the day by trying to avoid the snooze. That's how I start the day. Because I listen, because here's what happens. You tell yourself, like, I'm going to wake up early tomorrow. And then when you don't do it, your brain goes, I told you so. You ain't going to ever do it. You ain't going to amount to nothing. And so I really want to avoid hitting that snooze button. First thing that I do is I go grab my gym bag that I packed the night before, and I try and get a little bit of cardio in, maybe some weight training, something to just get my body moving. I got to. And then I plan out my day. I look at my calendar. Usually and now at this point, my calendar is so stacked and full that like I've really got to start to master it. Otherwise it'll start to get out of control. I try to include some time for a gratitude and meditation. Usually that's in the car ride on the way to the gym. That's like personal development 101. Like, you got to find some time for you. Tony Robbins says, if you don't have 15 minutes for yourself, I don't know what kind of life that you're living. So we got to find at least some times for us to get centered, to get grounded and ready to take on the day. And then from there, I hit the ground running, and usually the day comes at me with a million different things, but I'm honored, grateful, and thankful for all of it.
Awesome. All right. What is one of your songs that you're loving right now in your current playlist?
Yeah. So like, I'm a sneaky Jesus person. So all so all of the worship songs right now. So Maverick City Music is probably at the top of my playlist right now.
Let's listen to them this week. What's one goal that you set yourself this year?
Yeah. So this year, my main goal was to be able to get on 100 podcasts. And so you are actually my 50th podcast. So thank you so much for giving me that honor to be halfway there to the goal. So I've got more scheduled. I've got 2 months to try and figure up and clear this thing out. But I want to get it on as many platforms as I can to be able to share this message with people who need it the most.
Awesome. How do you spend a day off?
Oh, with my wife. God, I need that. She is amazing. So I try to spend as much intentional time that I can with her. And I'll be honest with you, I'm not always perfect at it. Sometimes my mind will get caught up in business stuff and work stuff and people stuff. And it's hard to shut this thing off. But man, it is so important. I think this year, especially after the book launch, I really understood the value of rest. And I know that sounds so cliche, and I get it. People are all like, that's kind of a hot topic right now of like making sure you're resting for yourself. But it's so true. Like, we are no good to anybody else when we are running on empty. So I got to find ways to fill me up so that I can keep pouring out.
Exactly. And last, how do you end the day?
Kissing my wife goodnight and closing my eyes as fast as possible. Yeah. So I packed my gym bag the night before. I try to do anything that I can to eliminate any kind of friction or confusion in the morning. Cause even though I wake up early, I'm not a morning person. Well, I'm groggy, I'm uncomfortable. I do it because I know I need to. And so I try to eliminate any friction points. Like, I pick out my outfit the night before. So and usually I try to wear things that are easy for me. My wife styles me. So she's taken that like creative liberty on me, which I'm really thankful for. I don't have to worry about all that. But I try to do anything that I can to make my mornings as easy and
Mhm.
seamless as possible.
That makes sense. Awesome. Well, Nate, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us today. I'm so inspired by you and your work, and just so happy that we got connected and that you came here.
Yeah, thank you. This was absolutely incredible. I love it. I wish everybody listening right now the best of luck on their comeback story and their journey. You're worth it. You're special. You are important. And the work that you're doing right now, it matters so much.
So awesome. Well, stay tuned, everyone. I'll be right back.